Okay, so I totally got my brain turned off and switched gears. So what were you just saying? I'm sorry. Oh, you were reading
Oh yeah,
Wally West,
yes.
and but you
So
were,
I
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. So that origin story got me kind of interested in his character,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly some of the other things you've said in Essential Issues about how he eventually gets married and what
Mm-hmm.
did you say he gets married? Yeah.
I think
Um.
so.
So that all kind of sounds interesting, but I don't know if I'm going to go back and cover like all the 80s and 90s Flash, or if I'm just going to pick it up in the 2000s.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I should ask your opinion on that.
Um, well, I think that I don't. I don't feel the need to go back into the 80s much with Wally West, like his post Crisis and pre Speed Force run. I think that
Hmm.
Wally really comes into his own with the comics that I feature in the Essential Issues series, which, if memory serves, is
Hmm.
Born to Run,
Yep, and that's
The Return of Barry Allen,
hmm.
and then I think the third one was what was that called? Oh gosh, it was it was where the Speed Force really, kind of cut loose for the first time. It was oh my gosh. Oh, that's gonna bother me. I can see the cover in my head. Uh, Terminal
But you
Velocity.
did
Terminal
right.
Velocity.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say those three are pretty key to Wally West.
Hmm.
And at that point, if you want more, then I could maybe scan through and give you some recommendations beyond that. But I would say read
Hmm.
those three first and see if you want more Wally West after that.
Yep. I
And
mean,
then maybe I would have some other recommendations.
mm.
Yeah. But those are just some great those are some great Wally West stories, and like, well, you read Born to Run, so you know his motivation and how wrapped up it is in wanting to live up to Barry's legacy.
Mm.
And I just love that. And I there
Yep.
is there is no hero motivation like that. And it kind of got lost when Barry Allen came back, because when you bring Barry Allen back and you start telling stories about him, well, to make him interesting, most times writers are going to make their characters flawed
Yeah.
in ways that might mean that Wally would struggle to look up to him, and then that motivation is lost. But if he's always has this
Mm.
rose tinted view of his hero in his mind that can never be
Yeah.
corrected because the hero has passed on, then
Mm.
he always has this ideal that he wants to live up to. But like in recent stories, he came into conflict with Barry, and Barry, frankly, because of the New 52 condensing of the universe, lost years of his own experience. And so there were ways in which Wally was a better Flash than Barry Allen, because Wally
Mm.
didn't lose those years of experience, and he learned things with the Speed Force that Barry Allen just now has foggy memories of because of the New 52 truncation of the DC universe.
Yeah.
And so it's a really, they left, as far as where I'm at in my reading, they've left Wally West in a really just a very different place, and I'm still invested in the character. I still care about him. He's become more of a tragic character now, but I've I could say so much more about Wally and his personality and what drives him than I could about Barry. I feel like
Mm.
when they brought Barry back, they kind of stole some of the elements that were Wally things and tried to graft
Right.
them onto Barry.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some of these New 52 stories with Barry, and I'm like, Barry was not a wisecracker like this. What are you doing? That's Wally. Wally's the
Mm. Yeah.
wisecracker, and Barry's the straight arrow. What the crap are you doing? And for example, like the Zack Snyder Barry Allen, that he is
Mm.
so much more in terms of his dialogue and the way he talks. he's so much more like Wally. Now, Wally wasn't insecure in the same, like, obviously insecure in the way that this Barry is in the Snyder universe, but his jokiness, Barry was not one that was like cracking jokes all the time. He was a standard 1950s, father you never had style superhero. So it's interesting. But I've been blabbing enough. What? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say it's interesting that both the DCEU and the CW series both they chose to use Barry Allen, but they made him this really young, naive, and varying degrees kind of jokey character. It's just I'm starting to realize that they've taken a lot more inspiration from Wally West in the comics to make their Barry Allen, haven't they?
Yeah, they really have, and they were doing that.
And I never knew that before.
Yeah,
but it was interesting when I read Born to Run to see Barry as this, proper grown up, and I'm like, I've never seen Barry Allen in that light before, because all I'd seen was these versions on screen.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think that the character of Barry Allen has come along in some ways, and they've worked hard with him, but to get him to a more interesting place, a more interestingly motivated place. But man, Wally's my guy.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I'm drawing a blank. Sorry, I was in menus for a second there, so I was focused and I was trying to think of a new topic. What do you think you might read after Batman? I mean, I guess you mentioned possibly more Wally West, but I mean, beyond that, are there any other characters that have kind of caught your eye, or maybe stuff that you have read since we last talked that you haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, so basically, once I've kind of covered the Batman of that era, I'm gonna go back to Superman.
Okay.
And read kind of up to the end of the 90s.
Okay.
And then my plan is to kind of in the 2000s kind of read it month by month based on publication.
Okay.
That's when I get to, I guess, get all that Jeff Johns type stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I'll, at that point I will probably widen my focus a little bit, include some other characters like the Flash and Wonder Woman and some Justice. Actually, I really should go back and try and get my head around Darkseid and all that, or the Apocalypse, all that stuff, because he showed up very occasionally in some of the Superman between Crisis and the Death. But I don't know, I'm missing something, because it's like he's just occasionally there, but he's not really this big ultimate threat that I've assumed him to be.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but basically I'm gonna switch into that read month by month mode.
Okay.
In the 2000s. And I guess that will be me working towards eventually, as you did the New 52.
Oh, the Flashpoint and New 52, yeah. Do you have any interest in...
Flashpoint?
What's that?
Sorry. I was going to say that while we were in Melbourne, we went to a comic book shop, nothing we don't really have much of locally, and my son really wanted to buy something, and he chose the paper version of Flashpoint.
Oh, okay.
And so he's just finished reading through that. So yeah, I haven't read it yet, but
okay.
I'm looking forward to getting there. So
yeah,
he knows more about that than I do at this point.
It's a decent Flash story. It doesn't I mean, it only incidentally has to do with the rebooting of the DC universe, but mostly it's a Flash story, and it's a pretty decent one. So yeah, hopefully he enjoys that.
Yeah, he hasn't said a lot about it, probably because he doesn't want to give me spoilers, but yeah, he did seem to enjoy it.
Cool. Have you had any interest in team books like Justice League or Teen Titans, or, well, I guess you've been doing the Outsiders, but like Justice Society or any other team books?
Yeah, I mean, I have interest in Justice League because it's, but I'm not that interested in the Justice League of the era I'm reading because it's all these like third tier characters that mean nothing to me.
Yeah.
I want Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern.
Yep.
I want the main core. I want to read about them meeting up and working together.
Yep.
And so yeah, I guess, is there a good origin for the Justice League, particularly kind of around the 2000s-ish era? I just really haven't looked into it at all.
Yeah, I mean, you can read, not long ago, in fact, it might have been the last Essential issues that I put up. It's not from that era, it's from the New 52 era. There's a decent origin story for them, but the classic origin, there's a classic origin story that I have as part of a trade paperback that was just like sold in bookstores called like Secret Origins, and it's a bunch of short stories that are secret origins for various characters. And that one had this alien, this weird, I don't know, competition or something that aliens were doing on Earth, where they would turn people nearby into like natural elements, or like one of them, it was weird, it was hokey, honestly, but like one of them, if you think in terms of like elementals, like the one that took the form of a wood or a plant elemental was turning people into trees and their skin would be covered in bark, and the one that was a, I don't know, a water elemental, I don't think there was a bird one, and I think people were being turned into birds or something, maybe, I don't remember. It was really weird and hokey, but that brought together these different superheroes who one at a time were running into each of these elementals separately, and then they realized there was a connection between all of them, and so they decided to work together to defeat, I don't know, the last one or something. And that was kind of like their first adventure. And then there's a comic book series that's 12 issues long, I think, from the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken, called JLA Year One.
Oh, okay.
And that's a good read. And it takes place right after that hokey story about them fighting the elementals. And so I don't think you need to have read the hokey short story. It's a very short story. It's kind of hokey. All you need, and they kind of cover that ground a bit in the first issue, because it's right in the fallout of that kind of little micro alien invasion. And so JLA Year One is about them actually coming together and organizing as a team, figuring out how they're going to operate. And I think that is a much more interesting origin story, and it's 12 issues, self-contained. Does it have all of the big guns? Not all of them. Like, I'm trying to remember how much Superman is in it, because he actually, in the post-Crisis on Infinite Earths continuity, I don't believe he was a founding member of the Justice League, but you've got Aquaman, Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Black Canary, who is worth knowing. I don't think she's super interesting as a character, but she's worth knowing, because she's been pretty significant in the DC universe. And that might be the lineup. I can't remember if Wonder Woman, I don't think she was. But in that Year One story, eventually it opens up and multiple characters who would be a part of the Justice League in the future enter into the story. So then you do get Superman and these, other, and I think Batman and other characters. And so, so JLA Secret Origin, I can't remember. I think I might have, like, at some point in my Essential Issue series, listed that as kind of recommended reading, but not essential. And so yeah, I would definitely recommend JLA Secret Origin.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I will definitely check them out.
And of course, I love Justice Society, and just love how they are the elder statesmen of the DC universe, the heroes that heroes look up to.
Yeah.
I just love them conceptually,
Mm.
and I'm trying to think of there's a great story that's technically an Elseworld story, but it wasn't really written to be an Elseworld story. It's so close to mainstream DC continuity that you could read it and just pretty much assume that it is in continuity, pretend like it's in continuity, and it works. I'm trying to remember. Is it called New World Order? I can't remember. But that is the like a World War II Justice Society story that is a great kind of introduction to the Justice Society, the basic concept of it. And then you can jump forward to Jeff Johns' run. Well, it didn't start out with Jeff Johns. It was David Goyer and someone else that started out that
Oh, David Goyer wrote some comics. Oh, there you go.
JSA. Yeah, JSA is the name of that run. It came after the JLA run in the '90s that kind of brought the big guns back to the Justice League.
Yeah, my only really exposure to the Justice Society has actually been Smallville, of all things.
Oh, okay.
And in that show, they were kind of like, they were the Justice League of like the 1930s.
Yeah.
But they're all dead now, and so that was kind of a bit of an inspiration to Clark. This is what we could be one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, my kind of mental concept of them is that they kind of, they existed back then at that time, but kind of, yeah, I don't know. Are the characters still kind of around in the modern day in the comics?
Well, that's what I'm reading up to find out. Because
okay.
the New 52 got rid of them and reimagined all of them as modern day young characters on a parallel Earth called Earth 2, which originally, they were on a parallel Earth called Earth 2. That's part of the history, but they revamped what Earth 2 is and what all those characters are like in such a radical way as to be unrecognizable except for their names.
Okay.
And when Doomsday, after Doomsday Clock ended, by the end of Doomsday Clock, it was established that the classic Justice Society from World War II is re-entering the continuity, but I haven't read to see exactly how that's going to play out, or if it's even played out yet. So that's kind of like where I hope to reach in my reading in the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay. I mean, there is something appealing about these group of superheroes that lived and worked in a different age. Like, that's something I really liked about Wonder Woman and Captain America: The First Avenger, is that they were historical superhero stories, and I also liked the Rocketeer, if you remember that movie.
Okay, yes, for sure.
But yeah, I kind of like that idea of period pieces with superheroes. So yeah, I definitely need to give Justice Society a chance. I mean, I guess the other thing that's always kind of been in the back of my mind is, these are just like the really old, early, cheesier versions of the characters.
Yeah.
Like they've got another Flash and another Green Lantern.
Yes.
And that just seemed like a bit of a hokey kind of idea to me.
And that's why I wouldn't recommend reading Justice Society stories before the JSA run. Because the JSA run, unsurprisingly, because of what Jeff Johns was doing in other books in that era, it digs into their characters a little bit more, and they're not just the smiley, can do no wrong heroes of the past.
Yeah,
they are worth looking up to. They're very admirable heroes, but it's funny the way their costumes are drawn. They don't fill them out like they used to because they don't have the muscle mass they did in their heyday. And so there's just something cool about these older heroes who aren't in their prime anymore, but they're still putting on the old hokey costumes. And it almost kind of de-hokifies the costumes because of the way they hang on them. It's like, they're just still at it, wearing those hokey costumes and getting out there and mixing it up. And it's just like, respect, man, you know?
And, you know, at the age that you and I both are, like, that's starting to become appealing as we're realizing that we're not the young cool kids anymore, but we're we're getting closer to the old fogies than we are to the kids.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I have always, even when I was in my 20s, thought that the idea of older heroes were underappreciated because of how they can be older generations can be sources of wisdom, and it's so modern and so part of our entertainment culture to vilify the old. They're the big corporate bad guys and the villains, you know, it's the old white guys and stuff. And so I've always appreciated and valued it when they don't do that and they actually have older characters that are wise and virtuous. But you're absolutely right that as I get older, I'm more and more interested in these grizzled, old veteran characters who are just like, they're just world weary, because I'm starting to feel a little world weary, you know? But they're still trucking along, even though they're kind of jaded or whatever. And it makes me wonder, like, if we will start getting like old man action hero fantasies at some point. Like if I was in the film industry, I would have started working on this movie already. And that is something that takes an older actor like a Patrick Stewart or an Ian McKellen or Morgan Freeman, you know, these old guys that could not do action roles anymore. And you make some story about them. For some reason, they have to be the hero. For some reason, they're the only one that can do it. I don't know. But they get to wear like some kind of prosthesis, an exoskeleton or a suit, or they take a pill or something that gives them their youthful, you know, like superhuman vigor and youthful energy. And because we are so close to being able to have visual effects accomplish putting an old person's face on a really, you know, young actor's body and really make it indistinguishable. We're not there yet, but I think in our lifetime, we're going to be there, and we'll be able to see old actors who are beyond the ability to do very much on screen surprisingly play the main action heroes. And I think that the geeks of today, as they get older, there's gonna be more and more demand for that kind of story, which we're already seeing some of with like the Sylvester Stallones and the Arnold Schwarzeneggers. But I can't help but wonder if it's going to be taken a step further, and eventually we will see like a Brad Pitt who in the real world is almost using a walker, but in a movie through visual effects and an interesting, cool plot is able to be this crazy physical action hero. We'll see.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that there's going to be demand for that.
For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.